Hari Om. गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Hari Om everyone. We are going to see what Jnaneshwar Maharaj, I hope you all know who Jnaneshwar Maharaj is, what his take is or what is his experience of the undifferentiated consciousness. Undifferentiated consciousness, that one consciousness, one without the second, in which there are no divisions, and so forth. That which is one. And do not forget, when we are talking about undifferentiated consciousness, we are not talking about the concept of consciousness. We are talking about the self that we are. It is one in the undifferentiated consciousness. And who is this master who is speaking about it? He is Sant Jnaneshwar from Maharashtra. He is such a great saint from the Nath Sampradaya. They were 4 brothers and sisters, Nivrittinath, Jnanadev Maharaj, Sopanadev and Muktabai. And at the age of 10 or 12, he gave the Jnaneshwari. He spoke on the entire Bhagavad Gita in the common man's language to one and all, not only the Pandits who were ridiculing him and putting him down and not giving him the Yajñopavit even though he was a Brahmin, because of which the parents had to give up their life because the father had taken sannyas just after marriage. And when that Guru Maharaj, who gave sannyas to his father, Vitthal Pant, when he came via Adandi, his Jnanadev Maharaj's mother, she touched his feet. He said, Saubhagyavati Bhava, Putravati Bhava. She said, please take your Ashirwad back because I don't know where my husband is. But that great master from Varanasi closed his eyes. He said, hey, he's the manager in my ashram. So instead of going on to Rameshwar, he immediately turned back and sent back the sannyasi. And because it was the Adesh of his Guru Maharaj, he came back to the family life. And 4 saints were born. Nivrittinath, the eldest, who was the disciple of Gahaninath. And Nivrittinath became the Guru of Jnanadev Maharaj and Sopandev and Muktabai. And this Jnanadev Maharaj, towards the conclusion of his, I shouldn't say conclusion, because at the age of 21, he felt he has done everything that needed to be done in this world. Just like when you have lived your dream enough, it's time to wake up. Same way, Jnaneshwar Maharaj said enough, and he took Sanjeevani Samadhi. And that great master, 760-70 years ago, he took Samadhi in Alandi and he is still there in Sanjeevani Samadhi. Because if you have heard of another great master, Eknath Maharaj, who had taken Jnandev Maharaj to be his Guru, mentally he had accepted him as Guru. That Eknath Maharaj, to him, Jnandev Maharaj came in the dream. Eknath Maharaj was born more than 300-350 years after Jnandev Maharaj. And Eknath Maharaj in the dream saw that Jnandev Maharaj is telling him, please come under this tree by the banks of this river, and I am there in Samadhi, and the root of the tree is coming and choking, please come. And he went, followed the instructions, and he found his Guru Maharaj who had taken Samadhi 300-350 years ago. And he said, I found my Guru, and the Guru Maharaj, Jnandev Maharaj said, don't do anything like this, don't declare it to the world. But he takes a promise, that was the disciples' wish. He built the temple, and today if you go to Alandi, the temple, the Samadhi temple, 30 feet below, Jnandev Maharaj is still sitting there in Sanjeevani Samadhi. Same way Raghavendra Swami is also sitting there in Sanjeevani Samadhi in Mantralaya. This, you and me, we can't understand what is this Sanjeevani Samadhi, because it's out of our understanding, it's beyond the intellect. But such Jnandev Maharaj, when he wrote this text called Amrit Anubhav, and he didn't write because he had an itch. Just like we have an itch, so we ask questions. We have an itch. Itch means a desire. Desire, so we want to give a talk, or we want to listen, or we want to eat, or we want to travel, or we have a desire to liberate. It's still an itch, because we feel we are bound and now we want to liberate. He did not have a desire either to give lectures on the Bhagavad Gita. He did not have a desire to write the Amrit Anubhav. He did it so because his Guru Maharaj directed him to do so. Nivrittinath, he told Jnandev Maharaj, now speak on Bhagavad Gita, and you read the Jnaneshwar Maharaj Bhavartha Deepika, absolutely heart-rendering, beautiful. It's a Bhavartha Deepika. It's not a logical Deepika, Bhavartha Deepika. Then same Guru Maharaj, knowing what was going on, the disposition of his disciple, Jnandev Maharaj, asked Jnandev Maharaj, oh Jnandev, now it's time you write down your experience of realization. You write down, pen down your experience of realization. And so Jnandev Maharaj started, and what came out was this Amrit Anubhav, experience of the nectar of immortality. And in this, I'm not going to too much into the philosophy side, rather than coming to straight to the point, as Jnandev Maharaj is continuously in and through the entire text, his attention, while he is speaking anything, giving any example, explaining anything, his attention is always on the conscious principle. How it is one without a second. How it is all inclusive. How it is the one which alone is expressing as many. In his approach, the neti neti is not required. If after I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, and then I am the Atma, then this Atma is Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, why not start from there only? And how does he do it? He starts just in short so that we can get into the topic, so you know what is the background. He begins with his prostrations to the Shiva Parvati, Shiva Shakti, with this full knowledge that Paramashiva, this is part of the Kashmiri Shaivism. Nath Sampradaya is nothing but Kashmiri Shaivism. And he prays to the Paramashiva, and there in the first chapter of Shiva Shakti Samavesh, there he talks about the eternal dance, love, dance, okay, let's say dance of Shiva and Shakti. And who are these Shiva and Shakti? The one Paramashiva, who is one without a second, who is all that there is, he desired. How can he desire? Why can't he desire if he is everything? He is desire also. And he desired. He has inherent within him the potentiality. When he became aware of that potentiality, because he is awareness itself. Just like you become aware of your hunger. Hunger came from within. You didn't invoke it. You became aware of your vision. You didn't invoke the vision. It was there. It is part and parcel of you. Exactly the same way. That one Paramashiva became aware of his potentiality. The moment he became aware of his potentiality, then he no longer is, then he is called as Shiva with respect to the Shakti. Shakti is the potentiality, and that Paramashiva alone is expressing as the Shakti, and with respect to Shakti he is called as Shiva. And there the dance, how they are one without each other, how they complete each other, how Shiva Tattva is ever the same, and the Shakti, he, as Shiva knows that he is the ultimate, and the Shakti, if you see in any of our gods, here why they are bringing Shiva Shakti, Ishvara Prakriti, Ishvara Maya, Ram Sita. So we need blessings, we must have faith in the divine. The totality and the individuality that this world is nothing but an expanse of that one that is being brought out by Jnaneshwar Maharaj. And what is that Shakti doing? What is that energy doing? That Shakti, if you see in that chapter, if you see the lords, let it be Shiva, let it be Narayana, they are always meditating. That means they are not looking at their consort. So, to get attention of her beloved, who is not other than her, she is part of him, but he is, but she cannot be without him, but he is independent. But she wants his attention. So what she does, the Shakti starts expanding. As she starts expanding into Sattva, Rajas, Tamas and into the whole world, as she is expanding, slowly the Shiva is opening her eyes, because that one, which had become two, as if now that two, the aspect, Shakti aspect is multiplying, and with respect to that, as this Shiva is getting more and more variety, that one Shakti is expressing as, Shiva slowly opens his eyes. When he completely opens his eyes, he is in awe. He is in wonderment of the beauty that the Shakti has manifested into. And in that awe, what happens to us? When we are in awe, when we are in wonderment, what happens? We close our eyes again in wonderment. So he also closed his eyes. So he opened up because the Shakti multiplied herself to get his attention, and when he gave his attention to it, he saw the wonderment and went back to himself. This is what is happening to you and me also every day. When we go back to sleep, we are at one with ourselves. Unfortunately, we don't know that. We are in ignorance. But when we wake up, it's not that straight away the world enters into your mind. Just slowly, initially it is I am, then I am the body, then the pressure comes, then slowly the thoughts of the world enter our mind, and by in an hour or half an hour, depending upon your stress level, you become activated completely. But in our case, we get identified with the world and crystallize the individuality. Shiva is ever in wonderment of the expression of his potentiality. Here also, this whole potential. Whose potential? Our potential. What is our potential? Our potential is the mind. Mind has all the potential. What are the three main or four main? Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, Samadhi. And in that Jagrat, the mind alone expands into all this. Nothing is coming from outside into the mind. It's the mind which is becoming all that, just like in the dream. But instead of being in this wonderment of this happening, how that one is manifesting as many and then going back to be the one, yet not losing the oneness while expressing as many, we lose the plot. And therefore, we get frustrated because we have lost the plot, and when we become the seekers, and then we want to give satsangs and listen to satsangs. But Jnaneshwar Maharaj says in this way to that. So see, with the first chapter itself, he has subjectively taken that Shiva Tattva, that Parama Shiva Tattva to be none other than the self. And he continuously equates the our experience to that and aligns himself. So we have, by thinking about, in other words, very simply put, Ishavasya Vidagam Sarvam Yat Kinjit Jagatyam Jagat, that one Ishvara is the Ishwar, that one Ishvara alone is expressing as his potentiality, that potentiality is expressing as the whole world, and that potentiality is not separate from the Ishvara. It is inherent. So also, the potentiality of the seeker, the mind, is not separate to the conscious principle. It is inherent. If taken in this manner, very quickly, transformation, abidance happens. It cannot be achieved. It happens. This is the experience of Jnaneshwar Maharaj. And in this manner, having first offered his salutations to that one supreme principle, the Paramashiva, and so on, as we explained, then who makes us understand this? How did we understand that Paramashiva as Shiva Shakti, as everything? It would not have been possible without the Guru Tattva, the Guru Maharaj. So therefore the next chapter comes to talk about the Guru Tattva. To come to that Paramashiva Tattva, to understand that, it cannot come by our own individual efforts. It is impossible. We need grace. To whose grace? Guru's grace. Now here also there is a big confusion. We feel that Guru Maharaj, we are not very trusting of any Guru, this, that, but here that topic is not there. Here he is very simple, that if you want to, what his experience is, he is recounting that without the grace of the Guru Maharaj, without the grace of the teacher, and who is the grace in his life? It is Nivrittinath, his elder brother. And as we go through that chapter, he is very clear that there is no difference between the Guru Maharaj outside and the Guru Tattva within. See? Guru Maharaj is teaching, but the ability to apply it on ourselves, the ability to come to recognize the Guru within our heart, what is that power because of which we become subjective in our approach? What is that because of which understanding happens? What is that because of which I am alive? What is that because of which this urge to know the truth, to abide in the truth, gets initiated within us? That is the Sadguru within us. That Sadguru within is the Guru Maharaj outside. Every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, even in this book, in the chapter of the in the second chapter, Shri Guru Stavana, the glory of the Guru Maharaj. He recognizes. He does not start any chapter of the Bhagavad Gita without first offering his salutations to the Lord, offering his salutations to the teacher, offering his salutations to the world and the people who are coming to listen. And he keeps off rumbling till the Guru Maharaj says, okay, enough man, how much you are going to ask for permission? Okay, I give you permission. Now start. Don't get emotional. That time he was young. And Jnaneshwar Maharaj was never emotional. But when you start talking about the Guru Maharaj, because everything is a manifestation of one, and by our exposure to the Guru Maharaj, when we come close, come to recognize the Sadguru within, both the Guru and the Shishya vanish. And that is the conclusion, that is the grace of the, that is the grace of the Guru. Then the third chapter begins, and the third chapter is the sadhana. And what is the sadhana? That is whatever the teacher has, the Guru Maharaj has taught you. Whatever the Guru Maharaj has, now you can take it both ways, the Guru Maharaj outside or the Sadguru within. Whatever the Guru Tattva has given you, what has he given you? He has given you the Guru Maharaj outside. He has given you the scriptures. He has given you this body. He has given you the birth. He has given you this world to work yourself out. This possibility of coming to abide in the conscious self is possible only for the human being, not for anyone else. So this opportunity is given. It's a debt. And all the teachings that the Guru has given, the grace, the compassion, the teachings, the continuous correction, where if the disciple is going wrong, all that is out of his love. Because Guru knows he is none other than me. The Shishya is looking at the Guru with suspicious eyes till he recognizes, realizes that the Guru outside is the Sadguru within. Till then. So all that has come unasked. The grace has come to us, whether be it of God, whether be it of Guru Maharaj, it has come unasked. Just like we did not create breathing, we did not create our vision, we did not create our hunger, we did not create our hiccup, we did not create our life, it happened. So, is there no kartavya? Is there no responsibility on my part to reciprocate what I have got free? Because I, as an individual, as a disciple is an individual, a seeker is an individual. Then how do I repay this debt to the teacher? Is it by dakshina? Is it by doing what? And here with this point, how do we repay the debt to the guru? Now, take the word guru in its all expanse, not just the outside guru or the whatever your idea of guru is. Our guru outside and the Sadguru within. The Guru Tattva, the essence, which is none other than the self. So how do we repay this debt? For that, the third chapter began, and the third chapter was the application. And what is the application? Jnaneshwar Maharaj, he emphasizes only on the chanting of the name of the Lord. And in that, what are the stages of chanting of the name of the Lord? Straight away, it is Vaikhari Madhyama Pashyanti Para. Vaikhari, the gross speech, Madhyama, the subtle speech. Vaikhari Madhyama Pashyanti, Pashyanti, the causal speech, and Para, the transcendental speech. All these four speeches are necessarily part of the creation only. As long as we think we are someone, that till then we have to keep practicing this. And maybe you have already been exposed, you have studied somewhere, you have read it somewhere, you have listened to it somewhere, that Vaikhari is the waking state, Madhyama is the dream state, Pashyanti is the deep sleep state, and Para is the Samadhi state. And the reality is beyond all these four. So don't get caught up in these four. And therefore, these four debts we have to pay to the Guru Tattva. That these four are the expressions of the same Guru Tattva. And we need to pay the debt of the Vaikhari. How do you pay the debt of the Vaikhari? By grossly, continuously being in satsang or chanting the name of that divine consciously, not mechanically, consciously with bhav, so that our mind purifies, and when it purifies, we have transcended the waking state, meaning we have transcended the body identification, gross body identification. Automatically the sound from the gross chanting moves to the subtle chanting, which is the throat, the lips and then the throat. There where the sound, the mantra is still going on, whatever your mantra is. And as that goes on, slowly, even the subtle state, which is the dream state, that gets purified. And that leads, just before it goes into the Pashyanti, there is every possibility you can go into Pashyanti, which is deep sleep, while you are chanting loudly or you are chanting subtly. And for many people, when they are chanting subtly, it goes into their mind. Yesterday only one person told me, Swamiji, the mantra goes on in the mind, goes on in the mind, goes on in the mind. That's a japa jap sthiti. You go crazy after that because you can't even sleep. It's going on. You have to get out of that. For that, you have to come back to the waking. You have to come back to the Vaikhari. And then what do we do? What does it mean to go to the Pashyanti? No, we bypass the Pashyanti. And if we bypass the Pashyanti, what will happen? We will go into Samadhi. And we have to experience it. It happens. It's not that we are wanting it, but many people are wanting it. But if you practice this sadhana, It will happen, but that also needs to be transcended, because you go into samadhi, you come out of the samadhi, the world is still there. The multiplicity is still there. The me and you is still there. I and mine is still there. Raga Dvesh is still there. This continuous effort of withdrawing your senses, withdrawing your mind, becoming focused on the mantra, and then diving into the samadhi. It's a lot of sweating, man. Is there a way? What I experienced, where I was, what I was in the samadhi, that unadulterated experience of the samadhi, where everything was just as it is. I was at peace with myself, I was content within myself, I was not disturbed by anything around. Can I live like that 24/7? In samadhi, you know you are the consciousness, there is no doubt about it. That's why you want to keep going back to the samadhi state, because that is more ecstatic, it's more fulfilling than getting involved in the world. Again, division is created. This division has to dissolve. But this sadhana needs to be done. According to Jnaneshwar Maharaj, this sadhana needs to be done. Some other people might do some other. They might do Kundalini, they might do Kriya Yoga, they might do Ashtanga Yoga, and do the Savikalpa Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Yeah. If you do this Vaikhari Madhyama Pashanti Para, automatically you will come to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. All the paths will take you to the same point. But what next? How do I translate? How do I make it into a natural state? This is the experience of Jnaneshwar Maharaj, 24/7, whether talking, not talking, whether engaged, not engaged, whether waking, dream, deep sleep, samadhi, whatever is expressing, he is never coming and going, he is never experiencing or not experiencing, he is ever the same. What is that same? That is the undifferentiated consciousness. Then what is that? Until and unless we have not become focused, we have not become purified, until and unless that something to do in this world, until and unless that I have to do something to realize, until this itch does not go out of us, till then this undivided consciousness, undifferentiated consciousness, even though it is everywhere, it is the only material, it is the only thing, it is the only principle, yet it eludes us. Even though we are always that, yet we are far away from it. This is the conundrum that you and me find ourselves. Jnaneshwar Maharaj, it has clicked to him, and therefore we are getting the benefit of his experience of what is this undifferentiated consciousness. By understanding, instead of creating a difference between I, the one who was in samadhi, and why I want to go achieve samadhi, why do I want to go into samadhi? Because the world is too much, man. When I come out of samadhi, there is always a list of jobs to be done. Wash the dishes, cook the food, take the shower, change the clothes, wash the clothes, do this, do that. Oh, enough, let me go back into samadhi. Then nobody tells me anything, I am with myself. It will be a natural consequence. It will be a natural consequence. If someone is purified, you cannot have Many people nowadays are performing meditation. They are doing meditation. You cannot do meditation. Meditation must happen. You cannot do yoga. Yoga must happen. So when does meditation happen? When you have lived your life correctly, meditation will always happen. When will sleep happen? When you have worked fully in the waking world from morning till night, you have exhausted yourself at physical and mental level. You touch the bed, sleep comes. Or when the night comes, sleep invites you, hey, come on, enough. Does it happen to you? The meditation is calling me. Is the meditation calling you, or you wanting to do meditation and get frustrated on the seat of meditation? So meditation must happen, and the natural consequence of meditation is, how can I live in this disposition, in this poise, 24/7, 365 days a year? Here, Jnaneshwar Maharaj is already living like that, and these are his words. The next stage after purification, after having paid the debt to the Guru Maharaj, to the Guru Tattva, to the Sadguru, to the Lord, whichever way you put it. Guru Tattva and Paramashiva are not separate. That same Paramashiva has appeared as Guru Maharaj outside. Who is that Guru Maharaj? He is Nivrittinath. Nivrittinath, he is, who is dispassionate towards everything, indifferent towards everything. He is Vairagya incarnate. Who is Jnaneshwar Maharaj? He is Viveka incarnate. So, whichever way you put it, the four debts have been paid, and now your mind, when it has paid the debts, now what? What next? It is experiencing the meditation, it is going into meditation, it is the para-avastha has been gained, the nirvikalpa samadhi has been gained. How do I convert it into a natural state, a sahajavastha, not a specific? Specific is that which under certain conditions is experienced and then you come out of it. Sahaja avastha is, in spite of everything, one is always that. For example, Sahaja avastha will be, your senses are doing their individual functions in spite of good vision, beautiful person in front of the eyes or ugly person in front of the eyes, conducive things in front of the eye, forms in front of the eyes or non-conducive forms. The ears are continuously doing their job, sahajavastha, natural state of the ears. Their job is illumination of the sound. Whatever the type of sound, they don't say, I am attached, I don't want to hear this sound, I don't want to learn. No, their job is to listen, they listen. Same thing with every other sense. Same thing is with our mind also. Mind's job is what? Only to think. Thoughts. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, ugly thoughts, transcendental thoughts. In the end, they are all thoughts. They come and go. Mind has got nothing to do with it. It's nature. Just like the senses' nature is to see, hear, touch, feel, taste, mind's nature is to think. Where is the question of any problem there? But then we create a problem for ourselves. I want to stop thinking. Chitta vritti nirodha. And we fight with our own mind. Nirvikalpa samadhi is fighting with your own mind and accessing that. How long will you keep fighting? You will get exhausted one day. Either you will go to sleep, either you will go into Nirvikalpa again and again and again, and one day, if you are genuinely available and you are clear with the destination, that Nirvikalpa Samadhi will uh, invoke a natural urge, a natural inclination to how do I convert this Nirvikalpa Samadhi into Sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja Samadhi means in and through all the states or experiences, we are ever in poise in ourselves. For that, something is required. What is that? You cannot, we think about the world in a different way. How do I think of the world in a different way? This is a laptop. I know this is a laptop. I am not the laptop. This is a glass of water. I know this is a glass of water. I am not the glass of water. It's an objective experience. Are we searching for that self, for that all inclusive consciousness as an objective pursuit within ourselves, without ourselves? Have we taken a position of all inclusiveness? Have we? So now, having purified our mind, having come to the essence, but right now what is our experience? That I am of the nature of Atma. Absolutely, there's no doubt. I have got no doubt. In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I experienced that, Baba. But when I come out and my wife tells me something, I don't know where that self goes. It becomes the angry Brahman at that time. Angry Atma, hungry Atma. How do I, why is this happening? Where am I going wrong? It is only because we were pursuing the self as an object of involvement. It is not an object, it is you. And it is not one per body. It is not one per body. If it is one per body, then differences will ensue. And differences, naturally, sukha, dukkha, raga, dvesha, etc. will continue, and you want to run away from it into samadhi. We have to come to a disposition wherein this Atmic Jyoti, this Chaitanya Vastu is all inclusive. It is the material which you have studied in other scriptures. I hope, I am told that you are all listening to other Mahatmas on the channel. That this Ishvara is the Nimitta and the Upadana Karan. That he is the material, he is the creator of the creation, and he is the material with which the creation has been made. Is this your experience? We are talking about undifferentiated consciousness. But do we see that one principle pervading in and through everything? We chant Om Sahasra Shirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapad. There also we think it is the Lord. We are talking about you. You are going into Samadhi. You want to make it into Sahaja Samadhi. What will be the vision of that Isha? What will be the vision of the water with regards to ocean and waves? See? For that, a different, you can't continue to keep thinking about this conscious self Firstly, one per body. Secondly, as a concept, that it is all inclusive. Cannot be, it cannot remain as a concept anymore. And therefore, Jnaneshwar Maharaj, in this fourth chapter titled Undifferentiated Consciousness or Undifferentiated Knowledge, he talks about this. And then he goes on. The next chapter is talking about how Sat Chit Anand are abuses to that one reality. You will be surprised. Abuses, oh my God, well, I'm not going to read that. No, any name given to that one reality. Where is the name? In your mouth. Where is the name? In your mind. Every name that you give, Sat, it begins, it stays, it goes away. Chit, it begins, it stays, it goes away. Why are you calling that reality Sat? Because you are afraid of Asat. Therefore, a counteraction to neutralize the Asat. Why you are calling Chit? Because you don't want to get caught up in the Achit. You don't want to get caught up in the unconsciousness. Therefore, consciousness. Why you are calling that reality as Ananda? Because you don't want to get caught up in Dukkham, misery. But is the reality Satchidanand? No, it is in spite of it. You cannot call it anything, and yet it is everything. And therefore, our knowledge is only at the basis of our mind level. What is that? Knower known knowledge, seer seen seeing, experiencer experienced experiencing. This is what is going on continuously. And what is this undifferentiated knowledge? It is transcendental to this knowledge. It is beyond. It is the overseer. Do you know, yesterday the waking, dream and sleep experiences came and went? Yes, I know. What about day before? Yes, I know. Who knows? Can the waker know that the three states came and went? Can the dreamer know the three states came and went? Forget about deep sleep. Nothing is available there. Then who came to know that these three states came and went yesterday, the day before yesterday, and so on from the time of birth till yesterday, up till today, morning. Here it is afternoon. For you guys it is morning. Who knows? It cannot be the waker. Then which one is it? Is there someone there who knows that whatever is being heard by you, by the mind, whatever thoughts are erupting in your mind, if you are looking at me at this moment, so there is a seer, seen and seeing going on, there is a hearer, heard and hearing going on. Is there someone who knows that there is seeing, hearing going on right now? Who is that person? That person cannot be the seer. That person cannot be the hearer. He is transcendental to both. But we make the mistake of pursuing knowledge only through thoughts, only through experience, only through the mind. Mind's job is to maintain the differences. Mind's job is to maintain the differences. And if you pursue the truth of yourself, of the self, through the mind, you will never come to the conclusion. Yet the only tool we have is the mind. So we have to do a We have to play the game. We have to play the chess with the mind. There are thoughts which are taking us into the world. There are thoughts which are talking about the transcendental, like Satchidanand, like undifferentiated consciousness. The chess game is on. We are trying to. The world is trying to checkmate, and the thoughts of the self are trying to checkmate the world. The game is on. You are in this game whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not. This game is going on, knowingly or unknowingly. So, as long as we are pursuing knowledge through thoughts, through an experience, I know it. If I can't experience, then it is not true. Through words, through the known, all these are indirect sources of knowledge. It is not direct source. You have taken yourself to be a waker and you are a seeker in this waking world, and you think, I also, we think that we are a spiritual people. I do my sadhana. I do from morning till I do my duty. I do my this. I do my chanting. I do my satsangs. But unless and until I don't take the totality of experience into consideration and do the sadhana only thinking about the waking, nothing is going to change. My daily experience is waking, dream and deep sleep. Until I don't take that three and process it, till then I cannot move forward in my journey. I'm only living 1/3 of my life waking, doing sadhana in the waking, accepting the wife in the waking, accepting the Guru person, Guru Maharaj in the waking. What about the dream? What about the deep sleep? Are they not your experiences also? How come they are not addressed? And how come the rules of the waking are not applied in the dream, or the rules of the dream are not applied in the waking? How come in the dream you are having a different wife and a different guru and a different children and different houses and different body every dream, and how come you are having the same body, same wife, same children, same Guru Maharaj, same house every day? How something is going wrong. These aspects need to be looked at, that we are living only 1/3 of our experience of life, not the total one. So when a person starts thinking in this manner, then he becomes inspired to know. Then he gets the Jnana Vritti is invoked. What is Jnana Vritti? An urge within to know, the urge within to realize, the urge within to abide. It is still a thought, but it gets invoked. Just like when we go, when the night comes, or all of you registered. I was told you registered. So maybe half an hour ago or 1 hour ago, if you were sent a reminder, like I was sent a reminder, Swamiji, you have to talk, don't forget. My message came, reminder. So I became alert that, oh, I must get ready, 1 hour left. And continuously in the mind that half an hour left, then for 20 minutes left, then 15 minutes left, then 10 minutes left. अच्छा मैं आके अपने आसन पे आके बैठ जाओ, हनुमान जी आके बैठ गए. Similarly, when we have lived our daily life, I'm talking about how the vritti hijacks our mind. That's what I'm talking about. At night, the thought of the sleep hijacks your mind. Right? Every night it happens. And you are thinking, after you had your dinner, you are thinking, whatever you are doing, reading book, watching TV, doing japa, whatever. But that sleep thought is there and it is pulling you towards itself. So you change your clothes, you get into the bed, you get into a particular position. If you are in a habit of listening to some music or reading some book, all that happens. If you are in the habit of assessing your day, that happens. If you are in the habit of writing down what needs to be done tomorrow, you do that also. But sleep is pulling you, the thought of the sleep. Ah, bhai, bahut ho gaya, now it's enough. Now I'm exhausted, now I'm tired, now let me, and you get in, you don't even complete the sentences, you are in that position now. And in the more we are focused on the sleep thought that I am sleepy, you did not do anything to remove the waking world out of your mind. The world automatically left your mind. Why? Why did the world leave your mind? Because you were not available to the worldly thoughts. You were available to the thought of the sleep. Your attention was on the thought of the sleep. Your value and importance giving was towards that sleep thought. You were focused single pointedly that now it's time, Are Baba, 10 baj gaye, 11, it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and enough for today. So it is not that you left the world left you. Urvarukumeva bandhanat mrityor mukshiyamamritat. You became so at one ment with the thought of the sleep that no other thought could penetrate the kavach of sleep. Jnana vritti is like that. It pulls you towards the self, where you are uncontrollably from within contemplating on your true nature. Just as in sleep, the thoughts of the world are still there, but you are not available. When this jnana vritti arises within, then you are not available to the ajnana vritti. Ajnana vritti, all those thoughts which take you away from the self, is ajnana vritti. Or another definition, ajnana vritti is those thoughts which first was it takes you away from the self, and the other is which keeps you away from the self, other than the self. All thoughts other than the thought of the self is ajnana vritti. Okay, that's the second one. All thoughts other than the thoughts of the self is ajnana vritti. So the invocation of jnana vritti, you have to pay the 4 debts first. That's purification. Nirvikalpa samadhi cannot happen if this jnana vritti is not happened. The conversion of Nirvikalpa into Sahaja will not happen till the appropriate nature of the I is not determined, of the self is not determined. And all that is required is recognition. All that is required is recognition. Arjun Maharaj, when he was having a crisis on the battlefield, Bhagavad Gita was given to him by Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Karma Yoga was told, Karma Sannyas Yoga was told, Dhyana Yoga was told, Bhakti Yoga was told. He did not do anything. He was only listening attentively. When Parikshit Maharaj was given the knowledge by Shukdev Ji Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam, because he had 7 days left, he did not do anything. All he did was become available to himself. Left alone, our mind hijacks. But when we are exposed to satsang for 1.5 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, without any willfulness, without any efforts, merely listening and enjoying the words that are coming to us, we become contemplative, which we can never become on our own for such a long period of time. But here, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, we are able to remain focused. Okay, a little bit here and there, depends from person to person, but more or less. I can't speak without focus. I have to speak. You can listen. I don't know what you are doing. Sleeping, waking, drinking, eating, lying in the bed and watching, listening to the Zoom. I got no idea. Like a fool I am going on. But I have to be alert because I am awake. I got no choice. I can't just allow any words. How do I make sure that no unwanted words don't come out? I don't go from one topic to the other or this, that. Keep thinking of that one. What is the topic? Undifferentiated consciousness. Keep coming back to that point. Keep coming back to that point. Let every example be about that. Let every thought bring us back to that undifferentiated consciousness. So what is that which is going to make us ripe? Is it the ajnana vritti which is going to make us ripe? Or is it the jnana vritti that is going to make us ripe? And what is the nature of that jnana vritti? Is it inclusive of the 3 states? Is it all encompassing? Somewhere it comes. Is it accepting everything, rejecting nothing, retaining nothing? Is it of that nature? And this jnana vritti is about whom? Is it some other person? Or is it the self that I am? Can I know myself through the thought? Can I know myself through the thought? Or am I in spite of the thought? These are pertinent pointers to contemplation, and for this purpose the jnana vritti has to be invoked. It must come about as a result of purification, which counters the ajnana vritti. And then Jnaneshwar Maharaj here says, I am going to take some verses from this chapter, not all of them. This topic will continue. I'm not going to repeat the same thing tomorrow. I'm not a tape recorder. Someone was asking me, Hamidi, can I listen to Saturday or can I come to Sunday? Will it be the same repetition? Nothing is repeated twice. The topic will continue. Wherever we stop today, from there we continue tomorrow. And it concludes wherever it is supposed to conclude. I don't know where it is concluding. Well, we all know the topic is undifferentiated consciousness. That's where it is going to conclude. Well, it is concluding in everything that I have explained is about that only. So here Jnaneshwar Maharaj says, this is his first verse in this chapter. Ata agnyatse nimare jnana abhede vavare nidamaru nizagare nati se zevi. This is a very old Marathi, 760 years old. Frankly, I don't know what each word means. I have not gone into the depth. I have got the translation of it and we are going to look at that. Here it says, having thus destroyed the ignorance as explained in the preceding chapter. What was the preceding chapter? The 4 debts. What were the 4 debts? Vaikhari, Madhyama, Pashyanti, Para. So you have paid the debts, only then you are able to go, come to the Para. You have come to be the self. The undifferentiated knowledge reveals itself as the awakening which alone prevails after the destruction of deep sleep in the waking state. Very, very pertinent point. Nandise Jevi. You don't get deep sleep in deep sleep. When you are awake, then you feel sleepy. In deep sleep, you don't get sleep. You are already gone. So it is in the waking that we feel sleepy. It is in the waking when we are doing the japa that we feel sleepy. It is in the waking when we are listening to the lecture in the bed, lying down, that while listening, suddenly a power nap comes and suddenly we get up and check whether I am on video or only on audio. I can't do that. You can. See? So, we need to overcome the deep sleep, the sleepiness, the inertia. What is that? Nidra alasya pramad. Where? That is at a gross level, Nidra alasya pramad. But here, sleepiness, Nidra. So when we are chanting the name, when we are focusing on the satsang, if sleep is coming, find out. Get inspired. Wake up. How long we are going to remain in that ignorant sleep? See, many people, it used to happen to us also. And I wonder, not wonder, now I don't wonder, but I used to wonder. How can people sit for 1.5 hours and listen to one lecture? Till we were not used to, 2 years we studied in an ashram. Every day, 5-6 lectures. Each lecture 1.5 hours. We are not used to sitting for so long. We are not used to listening to so long. Sometimes same examples, same ideas, same anecdotes. And sometimes a period comes, suddenly you go into the lull and baithe, it seems as if you are in meditation, actually you are sleeping. And suddenly you wake up and you look around, and start writing notes. It's because we got bored with the topic. We get bored with the topic because we are not subjective in our approach. We are objective in approach. And we have to hold on to that objective. We are trying to hold on to the thought of the self. Arey Baba, you are not thought of the self, you are the self. because of whom the thought is appearing and disappearing. We give lecture every day, satsang, Bhagavad Gita, Amrit Anubhav, Bhagavatam. Now I finished this, I got another 2 hours of Srimad Bhagavatam to go. 5 o'clock it finishes here, 6 o'clock I have to start again. For you it is 1.5 hours. Those people who are waiting for Bhagavad, they are absolutely fresh. After 1 week satsang is happening, very good, everyone is ready, fresh. I had 2 lectures before, now I have this third one, then I have another fourth one, 2 hours. How do I keep myself fresh? In this lecture, then next lecture, and if there is another one, how does one? Tomorrow when we will have this satsang, same satsang, it will be my 4th lecture, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th lecture tomorrow. I'll be starting at 7 o'clock in the morning. How do we keep the inspiration switch on? How do we not get tired? How do we not get exhausted? How do we not get bored? How do we not come to this point, enough man, this is... If you take the ownership of this whole thing happening, then you will wish it should all go away. You will wish it is tiring. You will wish, you will come to it is exhausting. Once now, not again. This is too much. But when you take it that you are not talking, someone else is talking, when you take it as an opportunity to contemplate, you take it, I'm talking here personal, my approach to it, Jnaneshwar Maharaj is not saying this. When you take it as, oh, I'm still talking because still things need to be clarified to this mind. So I'm first speaking to my mind, then you get the benefit, that's your problem. But I'm speaking to myself. And how long will I keep talking? How long do I need to keep studying, keep talking, keep contemplating? How long? How long do you need to keep thinking of sleep? How long? You will get the answer. So why do we not get tired? Because subjective approach. We are applying it on ourselves. We are not looking at this topic, that is this opportunity that has come to take 2 lectures. It is not to teach anyone. It is just another opportunity to interact with myself, to convince the mind, to wash the mind once more. To adjust the sails. If you read once the Bhagavad Gita, you will understand something. You read it another time, you will get many other things which you thought you had read, but there is still so much to know. You read the third time, even more new things will come. Same is here. Same is here. So, having thus destroyed the ignorance as explained in the preceding chapter, the undifferentiated knowledge reveals itself the sleeper and the idea of sleep. The sleeper, the waker, sorry, not the sleeper, the waker is pursuing, desiring sleep. How long is he desiring sleep? Till sleep does not happen. In other words, till sleep does not swallow him. And in other words, how long will the waker keep thinking of the thought called sleep? Till there is some other thought of the world coming and corrupting the mind. When the last thought, other than the sleep thought, has dropped, at that very moment, the sleep thought, which was acting as a counterforce to all other thoughts, the thought of the sleep also drops away and you get absorbed. Then there is no waker, there is no desirer, and there is no sleep. You don't know anything. Everything is one. So what is this jnana vritti which counteracts the ajnana vritti? It is that thought by which, by holding on to which, not holding on, by contemplating on which, by focusing on which, by ruminating over which, it acts as a counterforce to all other thoughts of the world, ajnana vritti. Those thoughts which take you away from the self, those are the ajnana vrittis. And when none of the other thoughts are able to invoke a response from you, they are continuously erupting in your mind, but you are not available because you are available to the thought of the undifferentiated knowledge, the thought of the I, the all-encompassing I, the one without a second I. This is still at the thought level, but you are thinking of what is the nature of the I. It has caught you from within. It is no willpower there. It has caught you from within. Why it has caught you from within? Because of the purification done in the previous chapter. You have done the sadhana. And when the ajnana vritti has become neutralized, become impotent, the last one is gone, do you need to hold on to the thought of the I anymore after that? We are thinking of Sat because Achit was disturbing us. We are thinking of Chit because Achit was disturbing us. We are thinking of Anand because Dukha or misery was disturbing us. Similarly, what is my true nature? We are contemplating on this because all other thoughts are disturbing us. We want to get to the source. We want to get to the source. In this way, when that last thought of the jnana vritti, which is I, mind is nothing but a play between the subject and the object, the aham vritti and the idam vritti. Idam vrittis take us away from the self. Aham vritti is the self in that way, and you are thinking what is the nature of the aham through the thought, staying with it, and when there is no other idam, no other thought other than I there to disturb you, then do you need to hold on to the I? No, the thought aspect of the I drops. The thought aspect of the I drops, and you continue to be. That you is the undifferentiated knowledge, undifferentiated consciousness. Vritti Rahit Aham is the undifferentiated consciousness. Then after that, whether thoughts come or don't come, doesn't matter. Jnaneshwar Maharaj takes a few examples, and with this example we'll conclude. I think we started at 3:30 for another 6-7 minutes. I don't know. I'm thinking another 6-7 minutes. The example he takes is का दर्पणाचा निघाला एव ऐक्य बोध पाहिला मुख भोगी आपला आपणची. Essentially, initially the face alone exists, which enjoys the reflection in a mirror through duality to attain the initial, essential oneness of the face. Isn't it? I know I have a face, I have never looked at my face. Then I go in front of the mirror. This original face reflects in the mirror. It's looking at the reflected face, and that reflected face when I have to go and look at that reflected face in the mirror, do I make the hair of that reflected face, or do I look at the reflected face but work on my original hair? I look at the reflected face, I put the glasses properly, I fix my beard, I trim my moustache, or do I do it of the reflected one? Whose? So, has the reflection brought about a corruption within your being? Just because you saw a reflection, have you become two, or are you still one? Have you become two, or are you still one? Same way, take this mirror to be the mind. In the mind, the self is reflecting. When it is reflecting, do you take the mind to be real? The aspects of the mind to be real? Or you take yourself to be the real? Or whatever is seen as reflection in the mind, do you work on the reflection or do you work on yourself? Question is this. We look at the wife, we want to fix the wife, we don't want to fix ourselves. We look at the husband, we want to fix the husband, we don't want to fix ourselves. We look at our parents, we want them to be better, but we don't want to improve. So many people, they want the world to improve, but they don't want to improve. So many young people, they want their children to have samskar, but they don't want to have samskar. Why? We have become old. What is their age? 35. And they become old. We have to be learners throughout our life. We have to improve throughout our life. We have no choice. It is happening. But this objective approach, we want to improve there. It's like improving the reflection, making the reflection beautiful. So you put the lipstick on the mirror, you put the lipstick on, you will see a ghost out there. You don't do that. You do it on yourself. So you look at the world, you work on yourself. Don't work on the world. Same point I come here. I'm talking to you through the screen. But the first person who is listening is the mind. pure one original reflecting in the mirror, duality is created, this and that. But that duality is not an impediment, is not able to corrupt my being, because I work on myself. I know it's only a reflection. I know it's only a phenomena. I know it's only an apparition. I know it is not real. What the reflection? Do we consider this world that way? Do we interact with the world that way? Do we interact with the body and mind that way? Do we interact with the waking, dream and deep sleep that way? That's why I had to give all that data in the beginning. Jnaneshwar Maharaj gave, I didn't give. We are living only 1/3 of our life, only focused on the waking. In the waking, you have to work on all the 3 states or 4 states. In front of the mirror, you are continuing to be the original one, working on the original one, being the original one in spite of the reflection. If mind is the mirror, are we working on the mind? Are we getting lost in the mind? Are we getting lost in the reflection that is taking place in the mind as way of aham and idam? I thought and that thought? Or are we continuing to be the original? If we are being the original, when we come to be the original, there we are, nothing to do. And we cannot become, it has to happen. We'll talk about that more with some more examples in our tomorrow's lecture, same time. But in Australia, it will be at 2:30. At 2:30 p.m. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. बोलो ज्ञानेश्वर महाराज की जय.
Swamiji, thank you so much for that wonderful session that you gave us. Viewers, with this we come to the conclusion of first session of this Weekend with Wisdom. Tomorrow again at Indian time, 10 o'clock, Swamiji will be taking up. Please join the session and the Swamiji will again continue. Thank you so much.
No questions, thank God.